and welcome to the latest transatlantic episode of Vox Vomitus. This is 2 shows in a row where our books were based overseas.
Can you tell we really want to go on vacation?
I know, I was going to say, this is becoming, I guess, our theme, travel.
Jennifer just dropped off. Jennifer, where'd you go?
I'm back.
Did you just go to London without me?
I went to London. I was like,
how dare you?
We're going to London, and I left. So this week we are going to be in London and New England with Margaret Porter's latest book, A Change of Location. This is why I'm wearing my travel hat, everyone.
You have the same hat as Hannah does right there. Look at that.
That's what I'm trying.
And the curls.
And the curls.
I tried for the curls.
Trying.
This is as much as my hair will curl. I give up.
So I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Pretty Ugly, the Hotel series, and the recently released The Japanese Box and Other Stories. Joining me today, as always, is my Vox Vomitus vixen, Allison Martine, author of The Bourbon Books, which includes Dibs, Since September, Move on Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder. As I already cheated and said, our guest today is Margaret Porter with her new book, A Change of Location. Margaret, welcome to Vox Vomitus.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. It's so nice to chat with you both.
You also match your cover. I just noticed that I'm like, you were wearing the same color as your cover, and I adore that. I'm like, I want that color. I don't have anything in that color. I don't think.
My entire spring wardrobe is
based around your book
coordinated cover? Around the cover for events and things. So I haven't actually worn this version yet.
Well, it works, and I love it.
So, Margaret, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about A Change of Location.
I am a lifelong author. I started writing as soon as I could hold a crayon, and I started reading fairly early because my mother at the time had taught first grade, and so she was used to teaching early readers first grade and kindergarten. So books and writing and drawing and making up things in my head were part of my identity. And then I also was a child actress, so I was on the stage a lot, creating characters, and I performed in grown-up theater from the age of 10.
I love how you say grown-up theater, and I'm like, we don't mean like adult cinema. We're just clarifying here.
That's why I say grown-up, because
I hear myself say adult theater.
Yeah,
like,
yes. I was the kid among the adults, so I kind of grew up backstage, and I liked horses and dogs and all the usual kind of kid stuff, and then I majored in sort of a mixed up major in college of history and English. And we weren't supposed to we weren't supposed to try out for the play our first year in college until the spring quarter. And I tried out in spring quarter and I was cast. And so then I declared a theater major.
It sounds like, and I love this, that you were like collecting majors that every parent says, please don't be a blah, blah, blah major. Yeah. What are you going to do for work as a history major and English major? I went to school for acting. So, and before that, I was an English and art major.
Right.
Yes, that's helpful.
No, multiple majors is definitely the way to go. So then after I declared that major, I went off to England to study British history, and then came back and got a master's in radio, television, film, because I didn't want to live in grungy, icky New York like all my actor friends.
I don't blame you.
No, I studied acting in New York, and I hung out with my friends there, and I saw what their lives were like, and I was just a little bit I just wanted a little more comfort in my life, I guess.
I was going to say space. Like how many, when you visited these people, they were probably all in one apartment.
Well, some were living in some pretty cramped places. Others were better off. But anyway, so.
But still, you can't have a horse or a dog in New York.
Not easy.
Parking is bad in New York. There's no horse parking.
No horse
parking. Well, except for the cops or the mounted police.
That's true.
Other than that,
it's a different career path entirely.
You didn't major in law enforcement.
So I did radio, television, film for a lot, and also during my college years, I'd done a lot of extra work and on location work. And a really good friend of mine was a location scout for some major motion pictures that we're filming in the area. So that was sort of my start in film and how it works on scouting locations. And then I did producing and script writing for informational films and tourism films and documentaries and all sorts of things all through grad school, because grad students are cheap labor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved away to Colorado from where I was living, and I lost all my contacts. As you know, it's a contacts business, and was getting ready to get married and was in a romantic frame of mind, and said, my husband said, I will marry you if you quit this horrible job you have. I had a terrible commute from the far west side of Denver to the far southeast side of Denver. It was just miserable.
So we're like, sold. I'll do it. I've already quit. I didn't want to tell you.
And so it was over. And it's like, well, what should I do now? And I said, this is when I've got the time. I should write a novel. I should write and finish a novel. So I did that. And then
is important. Yeah, they do recommend if you want to have a novel out, you should have an ending to it.
Yeah. So then I got a deal with Doubleday and an agent, and it was off to the races. And I've rarely looked back. And I've mostly been a writer ever since.
Well, I love that you have kind of built your life on all of these artistic pursuits. I joke because I've also done that.
I'm like, that's you,
Jennifer. That's me of going.
But with fewer horses, I don't feel like your story has as many horses. So swap horses for
the horses.
Burlesque and magician assistant, like those. Then it's otherwise the same.
Well, that's why when Margaret said adult theater, I was like, as a former burlesque dancer, I choreographed that number. Oh no, for musical theater, not a burlesque number.
And Margaret, can you hold your cup up again? I just realized there's more coordinating here than just your outfit. You have a mug with your cover on it, and I love that. Look at that. I have one that's supposed to be semi-inspirational. It says go for it, and most days I just don't.
Oh my gosh, I don't even have a mug.
These mugs inspire me. So the more books I write, the more mugs I acquire. So there's quite the collection.
At what point during your writing process do you already know the cover? So are you sipping out of a mug with your future cover on it? Well,
no.
I'm like, how organized are you?
That's very organized.
Well, I do. I do file folders in my, documents and stuff with ideas for covers or images or themes and things like that. But the wisteria, I can't remember how the wisteria on the cover. When I had finished the book when I went to England last year, but I was in all the locations of A Change of Location anyway. Mm-hmm. And it was close to this time, and the wisteria was out everywhere. And I remember that I had put a reference, maybe 2 of wisteria in the story. So when I got back, I thought I boosted that just a little bit. And then when it came time for the cover, it's a collaborative process. And I said, maybe we could do some wisteria on the cover. So then when we got to what's your author picture going to be? There's this one of me with, hugging the wisteria plant that was taken in England last spring.
Well, and thematically, now we have a specific flower that people should gift to you at events.
Just bring whole bad things. I was going to say, I really think that you could have brought out the cheese on the cover more, but maybe that's not as romantic feeling. It is for me because cheese is my love language. It's Jennifer's too.
My love language too. And I love that this is now, I think, the second book that cheese has played a major theme for you and I, Allison.
We just like cheese.
And the authors are like, well, I mean, the cheese is there, but it's
like,
not.
No, I'm pretty sure that's one of the main themes.
The cheese is important. The cheese is very important. I started writing this book 20 years ago. I mean, it's that half finished for. I mean, I when I teach writing, I always say, finish what you start. You can't sell an unfinished manuscript.
Oh my gosh. Jennifer and Allison.
I did that. And I always wanted to write a contemporary novel. I wanted to write this novel because I wanted to finish this novel because the last 2 or 3 I did had some, kind of heavy duty. They were historical and there was a lot of emotion, and then some people died, spoiler alert. And there were wars and political conflicts and everything. And I said, gosh, and we've been through a pandemic, and I wrote a lot and published a lot during the pandemic. So I was just like, what can I do? I just want something light.
I want to travel.
No wars.
Food.
Yep. Travel.
Cheese. Rubber ducks.
love
an
rubber
amazing
ducks,
fair,
Cozy
duck
cabin.
races, all that. Yeah.
amazing pubs, and a dreamy royal Brit. So tell us a little bit about change of location.
Yeah, and tell us who you would cast us in, because my brain's just like Colin Firth. No, they can't all be Colin Firth, but
I thought
Colin
Colin
Firth in my head.
Firth
So
too,
someone
and then
needs
I'm
to
like,
give me a newer, younger version, because he's
Yeah.
too old to play Mr. Latimer. He's just not. He can't do it.
Right. Well, so a change of location is,
not autobiographical.
well, yes and no.
It is. You said so.
It's not directly autobiographical. It involves aspects of my life and my previous professions and England, where I studied and have friends and family, and so it's and Somerset, which is one of my heart places. So the story is, I mean, it's sort of wish fulfillment. But when I first started writing the story, it was a time when a lot of the Jane Austen movies were being made with Colin Firth. So
Right. And then we all fell in love with him and lost our minds.
Yeah.
And we haven't been the same since.
There was a lot of
20 years
locations.
ago, that would have worked, but
Yeah.
it's been 20 years since then, and we need a whole new young generation of Firth.
So after, so that was, the Jane Austen movies, there was a lot of locations scouting and shooting in these big country estates. And so that was really the genesis of it. It's sort of like I want to fish out of water, but kind of not, because Hannah's half British, but she's also from Maine. And so she's the location scout, and she's been promoted to location manager, which is quite a step up. And you're in charge of the whole location, not just finding the right place to film the movie.
It very quickly became my dream job at the beginning of your book, and then less my dream job by the middle end of the book.
Well, it's yeah. So she goes into a cheese shop to buy some cheese for a party, because she has to thank the people who have been scouting for her. And she meets a chap who she thinks is just the manager of the shop, because he's wearing a nice suit. And eventually she finds out that he owns the street that the shop is in. And he also owns a vast country pile in Somerset. And he wants her to choose it for the location of this blockbuster book, kind of like a Bridgerton sort of thing. And well, I have a whole story about Bridgerton and Julia Quinn, but I won't go into that right now.
Well, now I'm intrigued.
So he convinces her to come and look at his place, and of course it's absolutely perfect, and it becomes the location, but it's also the location for a love story as well as for the film. And she's got a family secret that would be very problematic for a loved one if the tabloids found out about it. And as she discovers, her lordly boyfriend is a little more prominent than she originally thought. And
that has to be a misprint.
She's worried that the attention could be drawn by the tabloid press, which in Britain is just absolutely horrible and very intrusive. So she has to decide what to do.
Well, and one of the things that I loved about this is you're talking about, okay, so you're scouting these locations, and 20 years ago, it was for all of those Jane Austen films. Now it's for where are we going to put the giant tent for Great British Bake Off? And that's just as important to me, especially because there was so much food in here. So now if you were to wanting to possibly update it, he can just be like, you can put the tent over here, and then we can all judge food. And I think that he would be just as enjoying of that, because there's a scene that comes up later in the book where it's like, oh, they're now trying these different foods and all this stuff.
Yes.
I loved that.
There's so much food in this book. I approve.
There's a lot of food in the book, but that's a very Englishy thing. At my book launch, I served Eton mess, and I served English cheese and elderflower cordial and prosecco, because that's what Martin likes to drink. So but as I was trying to plan out what's the menu for my book launch, it's wow, there's a lot of food to choose from.
I could do lobster.
I picked the easy
really
stuff.
Good for the budget.
No. Lobster doesn't actually extend your budget under most situations. So I'd say stick with
not usually
the prosecco, but that's probably not cheaper.
Well, I actually bought non-alcoholic Prosecco because I
Wait, they
didn't
make
have.
that?
They have that, and they carded me to buy non-alcoholic Prosecco.
I mean, Margaret, your skin looks amazing, but I
Well,
would. That's.
The
But
clerk
it's
and
not
I,
alcoholic.
I know.
the clerk and I, the lady who was checking me out, we were just in stitches, and she says, I have no idea why this is happening, but so I'm like,
Did you
okay.
maybe buy cold medication too? Because you get carded for that. So like maybe it was your NyQuil.
Yeah, this wasn't going to do anything to me
That's
or
so. Do
to
they
the
sell it at
people.
the liquor store?
It was not at the liquor store. No, it was just at a regular store where you can buy non-alcoholic beverages like
Now I need to go find that.
fruit
I know.
juice and
On a quest.
yeah, it was kind of like sparkling cider, but I don't
But
know.
nobody
For some
cards me
reason,
for Martinelli's. I mean, it's just like,
I
no,
don't
that's
know.
fine. I don't think they make Prosecco, but now I want to check.
Well, I feel like just that moment is such a great scene for like in a romance, in a rom-com. That's like,
Yeah,
the beginning of a meet cute.
it would.
Well, yours
be.
was a very cheesy meet cute, which I approve because it
Yes.
had all the cheese, and I feel like cheese should be more featured in more rom-coms because there's no language like the language of cheese.
Well, I have spent time in so many London cheese shops. I
For
think
research.
for research.
I
Yes,
can write
exactly.
this off.
But I'm studying the white aprons and the little
Mhm.
boater hats and the little bow ties and they're all a little bit different. Some are more casual than some where they dress a little more formally and they've got the cheese and the counter and they hand you the little core, the little bits for you to taste and all that fun stuff. So
I don't even think we have cheese shops out here anymore. Like the last one I went to, I was literally a small child and then it went out of business. And now it's like you got to go to Whole Foods or something. And that's just not the same in a grocery store. I want to go to a little cheese shop and I want to look at cheese and I want to be distracted by nothing else. I don't want shampoo. I don't want a head of lettuce. I just want cheese.
what about cute guys handing you cheese?
Cute, I know, cute British guys handing you cheese.
That's a
Your
bonus.
husband's not going to watch this show. You can tell the
No,
truth.
he's not going to watch this show. And I don't think he would care if I was like, he's like, what kind of cheese did you bring me? That would really be what I'm concerned about.
That's, I know. You can flirt with low-level British royals all you want as long as you bring home the cheese.
Yeah, because I don't eat the bacon, so just bring the cheese.
Bring the cheese
on. It's all good. But I did love like the settings and all of this, and you had all these very distinct places in the pubs. See, we do have pubs here, and I feel like I should have had to go to the pub while I was reading your book just to get the whole atmosphere and see what they would bring me. And again, like I feel maybe it's not a good thing to be going to a pub in the middle of the day. Like I'm reading, I'm an author. Like, get out of here. What are you doing?
Authors are expected to be drinking in the middle of the day.
You're totally allowed to do that.
Authors,
Possibly.
actors, everything. I mean, Margaret can tell you. It's like,
Sure.
I worked for
Sure.
Hollywood.
I drink for all of these things. Well, and we heard a dog bark earlier, and there's a lot of dogs in this, and just there are some dogs who might be imperiled. Every dog is fine. So there's no war in this. And no dogs die. And I know that sometimes I've got to warn people like, there's a dog. The dogs are fine. This is a rom-com.
It's not a horror novel. It's not the beginning of John Wick.
No. Or
This is
Pet
a
Cemetery.
romance.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, dogs have a habit of getting in trouble or getting hurt. So, but they get better. I mean, they're fine. Yeah. But one of the dogs is based on not always, but I mostly put my dogs in my books, and I've had a lot of dogs. And my dog Dot was in The Myrtle Wand, which was the previous book to this, which was a reimagining and retelling of the ballet Giselle, set in the era of Louis XIV. And Louis XIV had this whole flock of dogs that looked just like my dog Dot. So I put her in that book. One dog that never made it into a book was my dog, the late, great Jewel, who was a lovely black and white dog. And I just needed to put her in a book so that she had her turn in the spotlight. So that's why there's a dog called Jewel who's black and white.
Is she the one on the cover? Because it looks kind of
well,
like
yes, theoretically, yes, that's intended to represent Jewel.
Is she alert? Was she a lurcher?
She had many lurcher qualities. She was,
but they were lovable.
But she was sort of part collie, part Labrador, black lab kind of dog. She was lovely, and lived. All our dogs have lived very long and happy lives, but they're memorialized for me in the books that I write.
See, I just get tattoos.
Well, that works too.
I know. I'm like, but I feel like, no, I do have like I think all writers have that like document on their computer of like, here's a bunch of ideas. I don't know if these are going to be ideas, but like you get an idea and you're like, oh, that's good. Write it down. And one of my ideas does completely involve my dog that I have now, Lord Tubby.
Mm-hmm.
I even know his name in that book. And I'm just like, eventually I'll write this book about him.
Oh, you owe it to him for
Yeah,
sure.
his name will be Bee-Boo in the book.
Oh,
I call my kids Bee-Boo.
That just shows how connected we are, Allison.
I know. Well, and it's also funny because like I have some of those documents and then I go back and look at that and go, what was I smoking? And I don't smoke. I have no idea what some of them are. Like they're just snippets and I go, was this coherent thought at the time and it just doesn't ring a bell now? Or was it incoherent then? And I just thought maybe it will come coherent later. Like I'll come back to it and it will flesh itself out. This is why
our podcast is called quote unquote word vomit.
I know.
Fake Latin, because I think this is the writing process.
Yes.
So does that happen with you, Margaret? Do you get like an idea? We know the idea for Change of Location came 20 years ago.
Yep.
But do you ever get ideas that just seem so off the wall, but you think maybe there's something there and you just let them percolate forever and then it becomes the reimagining of Giselle in the Louis XIV era?
Actually, that one came so fast. That's the fastest book I ever wrote. It was just like lightning. And I'm not a fast writer. So how that happened, I don't know. I have numerous book ideas and they keep coming to me. And I'm one of those people who gets very excited about the new idea, usually around the middle of the book when you think this is never going to end. And I force myself I stop what I'm doing. I write down the idea. I do a little bit of really cliff notes. I don't even know if they still exist, kind of research, just something. Is there any there? Are there characters here? Is there a conflict here? Is there a potential plot here? Is there a satisfying ending here? And kind of put together a few paragraphs of what I think this story would be and do a little bit of research to see how it would hold together. And then I file it away and go back to what I'm doing. And sometimes that process will actually trigger my ability to carry on through the rest of the book because I think
you're like, I just want to finish it.
If I finish it, then I can start this other, bright, shiny object thing that
I mean, do all authors fall out of love with their work in progress at some point in time?
Oh,
and then you fall back in love. I think we have to. I always tell people, usually I'm pretty good through my first draft where I'm like, this is great. I mean, there's ups and downs. And then second draft, I'm fine. If I get to that third draft, I'm like, I hate this. It doesn't make sense. Would it ever make sense? I hate it so much. And then I'll wrap back around and be like, okay, it's fine. But
yeah, every book is different for me. The developmental process is probably, it's like does this make sense? And you have to get someone else to tell you, does it make sense and what can be improved and everything. But I literally write in order to revise and edit. So that part of the process I love. And you have to tear it from my hot little hands and say, it's time the first or second pass proofs come through. And it's like, you've got to stop changing sentence structure. and by that time, I'm usually happy with it. And I can turn off that editorial brain enough to get it so it can go into production. But
was this one different because you were writing books before under Margaret Evans Porter, and then the most recent ones have been as Margaret Porter, but this is the first one that's contemporary. How different was that process for you when you weren't like, okay, so I've got to be back in 14th century France? Now it's what's going on right now, and does this feel relevant and just like current? How do you switch your brain from historical to modern? How does that work?
It's just living in the book world. If I'm living in a contemporary book world, then it's relatively accessible. You still have to do research. I had to do research on work visas.
I know.
Cheese. Well, cheese. Okay, cheese number one. I've been to a million
parties.
English country houses and garden parties and pubs and all that kind of stuff. And I met some aristocrats in my time. So that part, there's some life experience involved in that. But 20 years ago, we weren't communicating by text and cell phone all the time. the movie business. I used to work with the guys when I was producing documentaries who were lugging around these massive cameras. And now everything is a GoPro, or they're really, really light, and technology and filmmaking has changed. Not that I dwelled on that at all, but at least needed to be conversant with it. And cars, you start a car by pressing your finger on a button now. You don't necessarily need a key. So all these kinds of things. And so I did, before I picked up in the middle of the book to carry on towards the end, I had to go through that whole first part of the book and change landline phone conversations to texts or something, that kind of stuff. So that was, the nice thing is there's a lot in England that has not changed.
Yes.
And there's a lot about our modern day lives that has changed. But that's just, again, like I say, I love editing and revising. So that was fun.
And I feel like I have to do a quick shout out because Margaret and I actually share a copy editor in Christine Braley with Finalized Editorial. She just finished doing my debut novel, is getting, hopefully a brand new life.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Would you say is a facelift, or is that insulting?
No, it's a glow up.
A glow up. Oh, I like that.
Glow up. It has, now it'll have an introduction by Josh Mallerman, and hopefully it'll be someplace else, and new shiny cover that I'm not on.
Hey, I liked that cover, and no one knew it was you unless we told them it was you.
I just feel like it's such Leo behavior.
Well,
we all have our cover model fantasies, right?
Yeah, where I'm like, it's me. I just chopped my head off.
Jennifer refused to Photoshop me and Adam Driver onto my cover, so that has not happened for me.
Because that would also be the cover of my book. So yeah, shout out to Christine Braley at Finalized Editorial.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yeah, so okay, I just had to hijack.
She much deserves the praise. She did the final, the pre-publication edit on this book. I'm a good editor. I've got an editorial eye, but you just miss so much.
You can't do your own though, because I'm the same way. And I still have people go, you do realize that you switched names here or whatever, because your brain auto corrects a lot of it, because you're like, it's correct up here in my head. So you need those other eyes on there, even because I think I'm a fairly good editor for myself, but I'm much better for other people when I didn't write it. I'm like,
yes, it's much easier on other people's work.
Oh yeah, exactly. Having other eyes is always helpful.
And I have rights back to most or all of my published books through HarperCollins and Penguin and previous publishers, because my agent and I were very aggressive about grabbing back rights. And so some of those books have been republished with the glow up also. That's kind of a fun process, because the style of writing historical romance from back when I was writing it consistently has also changed. Readership's attention spans are a little bit different, less description, maybe
more
sloppier dialogue and stuff like that. Yeah.
I shouldn't have said more smut, but more smut.
Well, it's funny. It's actually in some instances less. I know, and I've had a lot of historical romance authors say when they glow up their books, that they take out a lot of the things that our editors were saying. We need another sex scene here. We need another, we need X number of sex scenes. And the readers say, some readers say, well, I just pass right through. I just don't even read the sex scenes. And so some of my former colleagues have gone in the opposite direction.
Cover up those heaving bosoms.
Yes.
Lace those corsets back up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Clothes on. Woman, Fabio, move your hair. It's fine.
So this is your first contemporary romance.
Yes.
Did you fall in love with writing this? Are we going to be seeing more contemporary romance from you? What are you working on right now?
I am working on I don't call it a sequel because it's not a direct sequel, but it's a follow-up to this book, which will feature my very first character from the Granite State, from New Hampshire. So I'm very excited about that.
It's Jennifer.
It's me.
And so then it's another bicontinental story, an American and an English person. It's also there's some artistic background as well, and the couple from A Change of Location pop up a few times also. So that's, but it's not a continuation of this book, and it's not strictly a sequel, and it's also a little
But
bit.
it's in the same world.
It's kind of in the same world. It's a little more. I won't say darker. There's some slightly heavier issues in it. Unless there's only so much I can do to lighten it up. So it's not going to be quite as light as this one, but it's got its light moments.
Is there still food?
There will be food and drink for sure. Yes.
I was going to ask if you already have a mug ready for it, but
No. Cover concept time will be coming up shortly. I'm hoping I'm in the final chapters of the first draft, and anxious to finish it before I do some traveling to England. So it's sort of the trip to England is my motivation.
Yeah, I was to say,
I don't want to go. I don't want to be going away and have to come back and finish the book. I want to finish the book and go away, clear my head, visit some of the locations that will be in this book, and then come back and then get into the revisions and then return to the next historical.
Now, so you are going back to historical after that. That's amazing that you
already know what historical you want to do after that.
Yes, it's also partly it's started definitely, and the research on it is quite heavy because it's a biographical novel of an actual actress that lived in dancer that lived in the 18th century. And
that's not you, Jennifer.
That's not me. Sometimes it feels like me.
Yeah. She didn't have the same moves. They didn't have the same moves back then. But so that's to be written, to be completed. But I was having fun with the contemporary. And I had always, even back 20 years ago when I was writing A Change of Location, I knew that this follow-up book was going to happen. And so it made sense to just go from one straight into the other and then go back to the historicals. And then I enjoyed doing the contemporary, and so I never say never. I'm not going to say, okay, I'm done, two and I'm done, because in all likelihood, I will write another one. But I've definitely got two biographical historical novels that will come after.
Now, you said earlier that you consider yourself a slow writer. Now, we've talked to people who say, I'm a slow writer. It takes me 4 years to write a book. We've talked to people who say, I'm a slow writer. It took me 6 weeks to write a book.
And we're like, we don't have all the same calendars here, people.
Yeah, no,
that's not all slow.
So what is your average process, we'll say, like for a historical versus the contemporary?
Well,
this one took 20 years.
This one took 20 years.
Well, no,
like
it didn't really take. I was not writing it all those 20 years. Yeah. My head's all messed up about that because I wrote The Myrtle Wand in 4 months, which for me is just insane. When I was with HarperCollins, they wanted a book a year, and it usually took me about 9 months to do the first draft, and then we go into the production editorial process. So it was closer to a year for those books. And then for some of my biographical historical novels, it takes a year and a half, something like that. It depends. I mean, writing the hard ones were the Hollywood, the Hedy Lamarr book, and the book about Ginger Rogers and her cousin, because the research there, I had to really, really be rigid and about the research, because it's different when you're dealing with the 18th, 17th century. There's a limited amount of printed material and reference material that you can find or translate or access. And I have traveled the world to access things, but for 1930s and 40s Hollywood, oh my gosh, you had the fan magazines, you had the newspapers, you had the the movies themselves that you can watch, newsreels, I mean, it was just this avalanche of
and you have
material.
fans that
Yeah.
consider themselves already experts.
Experts,
Right.
exactly. Yes,
And they will call
exactly.
you out.
And they
Yeah.
will go to Goodreads and
Yeah.
take all of the
Yeah.
issues.
So my head would have exploded with so much material, so that I had to be very structured in my outlining, my character arcs. What do I need to know to write this book? What do I need to know to write this particular scene? As opposed to, I have to know everything about Ginger Rogers and her cousin and her mother. So that was those books. I don't even remember exactly how long it took me to write those books. Probably a year and a little more, I guess.
Well, and is your research process, are you counting that as part of your writing time, or like, are you researching as you write, or do you do all of your research before you start a draft?
I front load research enough to create an outline, the characters, the plot, chapter outlines, even some scene outlines.
These
But
are all things that Allison and I are like, wow.
Yeah.
That
Well,
does
for the
sound
kind
like I
of for
should
that
do
kind of
that.
historical fiction, it
Yeah,
just
You have to.
it helps me keep on track. And then I also do research as I'm writing. Sometimes if there's a day when I just don't have the mojo for writing, I've always got something I can research, or I'll come to a spot in a scene and I think, oh, what did a refrigerator look like in 1932?
And that's
Yeah.
kind of the research that I know I fall into, is when I get to the spot where I go, I don't really know what this should be, and then I have to research it, and then I just fall down rabbit holes because then I follow other things. Like, I was supposed to be researching what would be here, and now I'm off on some other tangent, and I've forgotten what I was writing about. So,
well, yeah, and the refrigerator in 1932 was called an icebox, and
icebox.
it was, and I just needed to mention the icebox and have maybe a sentence about what was coming in or going
move on.
And then it
going in or out of the
where
icebox,
did
and I
they
probably
get the ice?
I'm looking
what was
and
that
then the
business
milkman's bringing things, and where does the milkman work? And what was the
and
dairy
I'm
process
looking
like
at newspaper advertisements for ice boxes. I'm just going totally off and reel myself in. Okay, I don't really need to know quite that much detail.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need to know the detail, but often I do not. And so it's just
they make for the fun facts when you do events or interviews. You can be like, well,
there you
I
go.
have a copy of an icebox ad
Right.
from 1932.
Yeah, but it's a constant process of just kind of reeling myself in and being
that's
realistic.
my life.
That's when we get back to the horses and the horse blinders. Like, your novel is over here. Don't be over here with ice boxes. Just nope, over here.
Yep.
Focus on getting this finished so you can go to London and everything else that you're going to go do afterwards.
So do you free write? Are you pantsers, both of you?
Pantsers.
But we're also marinating pantsers, pretending that's like a thing, because usually both of us think a lot about stuff before we start.
Yeah.
So there's a lot already going up here before we ever get to start typing, but then it can't form fully for me up here. It has to be written out.
Yeah.
So
like when my agent said,
like,
write a synopsis, I'm like, how would I know what the end is? And she's like, you don't know what the end is?
I know. Well, and I've done that too. And then I go, I'm not satisfied with what that is, because that's not how my process is. And I know that when I actually write it, it will go in completely other directions. But sometimes the industry doesn't really care about your process. It just is like, give me what I'm asking for right now, because I'm asking for these things. Well, I'll make something up.
I try lately to know at least the beginning kind of key beats. It maybe just 2 or 3 even,
like and, say, like the tent
poles. The end.
Yeah, the tent poles, and then the canvas will come later. And I know for what I'm writing right now, like the rom-com that I'm writing, I know what couples end up, but I don't necessarily know all the beats to get there, to know all the little things that are going to happen. And hopefully nothing that will happen will change that, because I'm like, no, I do like it like that, but I haven't gotten
What if you all of a sudden started shipping like the wrong characters together?
Well, that's changed since I started. It did change a few things, and some of the stuff that started, I'm like, I don't even remember putting you in this book, but here you are. So, okay. That happens.
Yeah, I'm a seat of my pants within a chapter. I'll have I know what a chapter needs to accomplish. I know what the characters need to do. I know where the conflict is. I have a basic idea of where they come out of the chapter before it leads to the next one. And so it's just, so I know that part, but how I get there is just completely
Magic.
that's just intuition and imagination, and it fills in the gaps. And
I always feel like it's like way back in school for theater and in acting classes, it's an improv class.
Right.
And so I don't know how my characters are going to get to the end of that scene, but they will.
Right.
I count on them to tell me.
And acting technique is just, it's so valuable to me as an author, always has been. And I worked for a director who, when we would do plays, we had to do these really, really exhaustive encyclopedic character biographies. And I just really dug that. I
still do it for my characters.
So I do it for my characters. That's just part of my work process. I do it very early on, and then I have to remind myself, let's go back to that. Maybe there's something there that we can glean and pull out in a somewhere in the book to reinforce something, or to make it more accurate to the original vision of the character. And that was all that kind of, I've taught workshops and classes and everything about using acting to performance techniques and as a writer. And I think dialogue tends to come easily to former actors and actresses, because we're used to the give and take of dialogue without the, where the stage narrative is much, much shorter than the kind of descriptive narrative or internal monologue that we do in a novel.
Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah. Well, and one of the things, so earlier you mentioned Bridgerton and Julia Quinn. Can you come back to that? And are you doing Bridgerton in the next book?
No. No.
That would not be contemporary, but you never know.
No, I was very much, when I was writing at HarperCollins Avon, I was on the Bridgerton trajectory, if you will, at the same time as Julie. And I can't remember which Bridgerton book she was writing at the time that I decided I wanted to switch to more mainstream historical fiction. But I was moving up the list as she was. And, the Bridgerton series was just part of the list at the time. And the fact that it's not, that Shondaland picked it up so belatedly, 20 years later or whatever it was, is
it. And it's like, this is the one.
So amazing. And really, so it's been exciting to see that the impact of it, in terms of television, in terms of Netflix, in terms of rom-coms being made, Hallmark Channel kind of stuff, all of that. And it's really, the rising tide lifts all boats, and it's really exciting for Julie. I don't know how someone writes novels when all of that is happening at the same time. Going to the premieres and hanging out on the set, and then doing all the promotions. She's going to be on the Today Show later this week, talking about some book recommendations, and it's just kind of like, boy, I would find that so distracting. I tend to be.
When do you do the writing?
You don't.
Yeah, and I tend to be, when I'm actively writing, for the most part, I tend to be fairly hermetic. I tend to not. Yes. And I like winter time a lot, because I don't have to go anywhere, and I get a lot done, and I'm a gardener and I like to be outside. And so at this time of year, it's like, I need to finish writing this book because I want to be outside. I need to mulch the garden, and I need to prune the roses, and I need to.
You need to make sure your deadline is always at the very end of mud season every year.
Yeah. And yesterday it rained, and I'm like, yay, it's great. A rainy day. I have no excuse not to write this book.
Get it done. Well, so long as you aren't growing nettles and displaying them in a church, you're fine.
I don't know how that came. Well, I do know how that came to me. I've been stung by stinging nettles, and I've been to flower show things in England, and I just somehow, the imagination is the writer's greatest gift, and I somehow just thought, what would be something really horrible to put in try to mess up a fancy flower show? And I thought. At first I thought something that would make people sneeze. And then I thought, well, okay, it's this time of year, and what would be growing? And stinging nettles seem like they're growing all the time. So So
But yeah, you
yeah,
can't do that. What is it? The corpse flower that only blooms like once a
Oh,
year
right,
or once
yeah,
every
and
couple of years. That one
smells
would require too much timing and probably
Yeah.
doesn't bloom in England. That's just
Yeah,
Northeast, so-
don't want
those tend to be in indoor type things. But yeah, so there were some fun little things like that.
I love that you said the ultimate writer thing, because I feel like as all writers, we're writing, we love our characters, and then we always think, what can I do to make them miserable right now? Like, how do I ruin this very good thing that's happening? And that's in any genre. Contemporary
Oh, yeah.
romance, I
Yep.
write horror, Allison with spec fiction,
Mhm.
and even your rom-coms. It's like,
Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's
sure.
actually
going
much
well.
easier to ruin things for the rom-coms because they do it to themselves 90%
Yes.
of the time. Yeah.
Definitely.
It's like, just talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're the
and
writer
usually
going,
just
I don't know why they're not talking to each other.
Yeah, just insert Melinda, scene is ruined. Done. That's all I'm gonna do. Oh, she opened
well,
her
in
mouth.
historical, it's so easy to ruin people's lives. You know, you can have a war or a famine or a plague or
Plague.
Tuberculosis. Done.
yeah, all that kind of good stuff. Acts of God, acts of nature, and that. So you have that little extra impact, and but also human flaws are mostly what messes things up for sure in relationships.
And tuberculosis.
And tuberculosis and the good old
Yeah.
TB. Margaret, you have been a delight, as I knew you would be. Everyone, please make sure to check out A Change of Location by Margaret Porter. I should put my travel hat back on.
Put your hat back on.
I almost brought out my passport too, but then I thought it would be just too tempting because I had.
You would just leave.
I would leave. I think this book, there was so much going to the airport and talking about, flights, places. I had travel dreams all last night, and I woke up like, oh, I'm going to Latvia. And then I was just like, oh, in September.
Yeah, not for a while, sweetheart. Sorry.
Not for a while.
Wear the hat. Take the hat with you.
Oh, I definitely will.
It's a
I
perfect
have
hat.
several that roll up very nicely in my suitcase. Not that anybody cares. So everybody, change of location, Margaret Porter. Check out her website, margaretporter.com. Everybody who's tuning in live or watching us on the replay, in 2 weeks, we have Lindy Ryan.
I would say it's Lindy Ryan. Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. And if you have not heard about Bless Your Heart, please make sure to check it out. It is out now. Esquire magazine just named it one of the top 25 horror novels of 2024. So we are excited to have her. Texan women who run a funeral home and fight vampires.
Oh my gosh.
Love it.
Wow.
See you.
Thank you very much.